Hi everyone, it's me, Krylios, Team Rayceen Productions co-host and moderator. And joining me today is the High Priestess of Love, Rayceen Pendarvis.
Greetings and salutations, all.
Joining us today is Rasheed Newson. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here. Lovely talking to you.
Thank you. It is such a pleasure to have you here. And I know you and Rayceen have already connected before, so I know it's great to see each other again.
Oh yeah, we're old friends.
Yes, which is a good thing.
Lovely, lovely, lovely. So thank you so much for being here. Of course, you want to talk about your latest book that is out. But before we get into that, let's talk about storytelling a little bit and how you got into storytelling and the importance of that for you and your life.
Well, primarily I'm known as a TV writer, a drama writer to be specific. My writing partner and I worked on Lie to Me and The 100 and Narcos and The Chi, and helped develop the reboot of Bel Air, which has its second season premiere on February 23rd on Peacock. Very exciting. But I have been a storyteller all my life. I grew up in Indiana, and quite frankly, I was bored a lot. And so when you're bored, you read, and then after you read a bit, you start making up your own stories.
Yes.
And I would write in my journals, and I mean, I've never gotten less than an A in English class, which is a lot better than I can say about all the other subjects I was required to take. So it has sort of come naturally, and it was. And I must say, and this is really important, I think, for a lot of people, because maybe we're not all storytellers, but you might know somebody, you might notice a cousin or one of your children. You've got to support that. You've got to nurture that. It meant a lot to me that when I told my family I want to go to LA and try to be a screenwriter, no one laughed. You know, no one said, well, that's not what we do, and that's not who we are. They said, no, how are you going to pay your bills? I mean, they were a little. They had the mom and dad concerns of how are you going to support yourself, but no one told me that was out of the question. And you need that. You, especially if you're a young artist, you need a lot of encouragement wherever you can get it.
Certainly. That's so important. And all of that writing has now led to this wonderful, fabulous book with such a thought-provoking title. My government means to kill me. Wow.
Well, I think it's something that if you've been part of any minority in America, you felt that sentiment in your heart. Even if you maybe never said those words. The story is centered on a young gay Black man in the mid-'80s in New York City during the height of the AIDS crisis. And through their inaction, quite willing inaction, the government in many ways had decided that they weren't worth saving, let's say, at the very least. And the government didn't seem to be shedding a tear at how much the LGBTQ plus population was dying. And it was a real moment in our community to sort of band together and save ourselves and demand the resources we needed and to give the care that we deserve to each other.
And that's so important. You shed a wonderful, wonderful light on a time for some people, such as myself, who lived through it. And when we lived through that pandemic and what it was like coming through it and the lives that you lost. But it's so wonderful because people look at it as tragedy. But in the tragedy came triumph. Came these remarkable people that we met along the way, people who changed our lives. And you tell a story of this colorful time in such a unique way that, it honors that time and those period and the people. So what, of all stories to tell, what made you particular drawn to this? How were you drawn to this story, this time, this era?
Oh, I mean, as a gay Black man myself, I'm 43, so I was 10 or 11 during the height of this story, so too young to be out there on the front lines in any meaningful way. But I think you always sort of look back at history, especially for moments of crisis for your community, and you wonder who you would have been.
Yeah.
and how you would have reacted. I felt that way about the civil rights movement. I'm sure people feel that way about whether it's living through the Holocaust or the Vietnam War protest movement. There are these times when we really are called to find out what we are made of. And one of the things I wanted to do with the book is take a character who was young and seemed to be an unlikely candidate to become a political activist. You know, he's young and he's sort of selfish and a little immature and myopic, but this is happening around him. And one of the things I think that was, you know, one of the silver linings that, you know, you can talk about coming from that is a lot of people found out they were stronger than they thought. They had talents they didn't know they had reserve they didn't know they had, because you don't quite know who you can be until it's demanded of you.
Yeah.
And you live up to the moment. And I wanted to sort of have a character who does that, because I think it's very easy to sometimes look at people who did that work, or look at people who respond to the needs in our communities and almost put them on a pedestal as if they are superhuman. They're not like the rest of us, but of course they are. And we could do that too if we dedicated ourselves to it. And so I really wanted to have that conversation in the book. I also wanted someone very young, because I'm with every minute I'm not as young as I used to be, and I like young people, and I sometimes think they get a bad rap, and I think they're really hard on themselves. And you know, you see now with like Black Lives Matter, any movement, sometimes there's this demand of, well, what do you guys want and what's the agenda? And I want to go, wait a minute. That's not how things have worked historically. Historically, you just respond to a need. The agenda will come with time. We'll figure that out as we assess what we need as we go. But when you look at a lot of movements, they are often run by young people who really didn't know what they were doing beyond addressing what was in front of them. And then something else bloomed, and that's okay. And that's kind of how it works.
Oh God, I love that. How long did it take you to complete the novel? And did you learn anything about yourself or just the world in general during the process of it?
It took about 2 years to write it. I mean, I told myself I was also writing television. My husband and I have 2 small children, and there was a pandemic. So unlike most writing assignments in television, I tell people we don't have writer's block. We can't afford to. There is a schedule, and there are hundreds of people waiting, and there are millions of dollars at stake, and you have got to write those pages. With this, I told myself the book's going to take as long as it takes, you know, and some nights I've got to tend to the kids, or some nights I've got to do this other job, or some nights I just want to drink wine on the couch with my husband, and I'm going to do those things. And this book will develop at its own pace, which is so, I mean, I'm so type A when it comes to my writing. Typically, I have an outline, and I just said, you'll drive yourself crazy. What I discovered is the story can change over time. There are things, I thought this story was going to be something else when I began 2 years ago. And if I had sort of just rushed it or forced that vision, it would be dramatically different. And I don't think it would be as rich as it became. It was maybe 6 months in before I was like, oh, this is what the story's about.
Yeah.
I can take this chapter out, and I need to fix that. That doesn't fit anymore. I mean, but there's something too, if you can let something breathe, it'll tell you what it is. Yeah. Whereas if you are very like, I'm going to dictate the terms and we're going to just knock this out, it can limit creativity. And that's very new for me. Again, television, it's been 15 years. We're never late. We don't do that. You have to make it work, and you have to kind of make it work now. And it was nice to be working on something that could breathe. And I could say, well, I'm a little confused. I don't know how I'm going to work that out, and give myself 3 weeks to figure it out. That this never happens in the rest of my writing life.
Well, let me ask you this question. As I always ask writers, you know, there are people who come into your life, and when you write stories, you kind of base them loosely on people. You take a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of that. Any of your characters based on real life people?
Oh yeah, I mean, Angie, who in the book is a lesbian who is running a renegade hospice for Black men dying of HIV and AIDS. I mean, by the way, one of the things that's nice about this book is be able to talk about things that in the beginning we couldn't really talk about because it would have confused the issue. I mean, in the beginning, all AIDS narratives were like, were people worth saving? Please help us.
Mm-hmm.
To talk about how, mercy killing and the right to die really became part of the conversation, or to have to talk about how racism meant, like, a lot of HIV positive Black men, they had nowhere to go. Nobody's going to take them in. That families weren't terribly supportive. They may not even be out to their families. And so they found these sort of underground networks where somebody would say, well, look, we're going to take care of you in your last days. And so Angie is running one of those places. All of them, of course, also illegal in the sense that nobody's licensed for this. But there's a need for it, so we're going to take care of our own and we're going to do it. But Angie comes from a type of advocate that I've known and always had a sweet spot for, which are people who do very good work and don't have the best of attitudes. There's a feeling that if you're good, you're supposed to be saintly, that you must whistle while you work.
Ooh.
I have met some of the most effective people I've met. They have a great capacity for work. They have a great tenderness with the clients or the people they're serving. But boy, once or twice a year, you're like, I wish I never met you. I mean, they really do breathe fire. And I understand that. And I'm partial to it for whatever reason. I mean, in the Trey sense, there's a part in the book where Angie really would sort of fire off her temper at her. I've been on the receiving end of that. I once had somebody who I adore tell me I must have been the dumbest, blackest fairy ever to walk in DuPont Circle. I mean, I don't even remember what the offense was.
Yes.
But I could give it back. I could, I think my thing was like, and I'm the only person you could get to come here and help you today. Okay, but there's an affection that can grow between these people. And so I did feel that there were several people who sort of Angie was based on, which is why I probably got to a point in the book where I had to save one or two characters, and I chose her.
Wonderful, wonderful. Tell me, how important is it for you in your writing, whether it's television, whether it's your novel, to have queer narratives and to explore queer narratives and to include queer narratives in different and unique ways?
Well, I mean, heaven knows I always try. I mean, I don't think my record's great at it. I'm afraid to say. On most every show I've been on, I've tried to raise those stories, to bring those characters into the forefront. Television's a collaborative effort. There are a lot of voices and a lot of decision makers. And one thing that I think is sort of people misunderstand about television, and I understand why it happens, you get a lot of showrunners and they want to pretend that I have complete power and I just can do whatever I want. They're like three people who can do that, and they're all named Shonda. I mean, it's really tough to get in that position, right? The rest of us have to make compromises. And I've had some success with characters who I've been able to, but the book is probably the first storytelling where I could take it as far as I wanted it to. I mean, I would joke with my husband as I was writing and I had no title. I would say this is an aggressive act of homosexuality. Because also what happens to you as a storyteller, and I've been doing this, this has been my entire career, without even realizing it, you begin to censor yourself. They don't even have to tell you anymore. That won't fly. So an idea will come in your head and you'll go, oh, I'm not going to write that. I don't want the fight. They're never going to do it. And I didn't probably realize how much that had seeped into me until I wrote this book. And I would hear that voice going, well, you can't. And I said, wait, yes, I can. Oh, absolutely. In fact, we have to now.
Yeah.
And that was very liberating.
That's important. That is so important. Well, before we close it out, do you have any teases for anybody watching for Bel Air season 2 coming up?
Yes. For season 2, I think one thing I'm really proud of is I think the show has done a good job of both being modern and embracing the legacy.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got a great familiar face in those early episodes that I think people are going to be very happy to see again.
Wonderful. We love that. We love a familiar face. Now, Rasheed, how can people go ahead and pick up the book, follow you, keep up with what you're doing, and learn more about you?
The book is sold widely everywhere. So I would tell people, first and foremost, if you can, try IndieBound. That indiebound.com will take you to your local independent bookstore where you can find the book. But look, we also love Amazon. If that's what you do, that's what you do. You get it at Amazon. I can be found on Twitter at Rasheed Newson. I can also be found at Hive at Rasheed Newson, because who knows how long Twitter's going to last at this point. I'm also at Instagram at rasheed.newson.author.
Awesome. And we're going to have those links in the description below so that our viewers can go ahead and check that out. Rasheed, thank you so much for joining us today. It has been such a pleasure getting to talk with you, getting to pick your brain and learning more about you and learning more about this fabulous book. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Always a pleasure.
Always.
Thank you. And to our viewers, please follow Team Rayceen Productions on all forms of social media. Click around our YouTube channel, check out our other interviews, vlogs, and more. And Rayceen, what would you like to tell our viewers?
Thank you for watching.